Begin by opening the Start menu. Go to All Programs and select LEGO Mindstorms EDU NXT. The startup screen will appear. If your class is using profiles, select your profile from the menu at the top of the screen. Select the text in the Start New Program box and replace the text with a name for your program. For this program, use your initials followed by the word Forward. Push the Go button to create the new program. To make more space, click the red X to close the Robot Educator on the right. Click the tab with the 3 squares in the lower left part of the screen to change the palette mode to the Complete palette. Now you're all set up to write your first program. Move your cursor over the Action Palette button. A menu will open up with action blocks. Drag a motor block onto the workspace grid and drop it on the area labeled Start. Check to be sure that the white sequence beam links up the new block. If the block isn't properly linked, it will appear grayed out like this. To fix this, try moving the block somewhere else on the workspace and then moving it back into place. Now we have to configure this block to do what we want. There is no motor in port A, so let's use the motor plugged into port C. Select port C on the configuration panel. Now tell your motor how long to stay on. Open the Flow palette and find the Wait For block. Drag the Wait For block onto the workspace and drop it to the right of the motor block. The Wait For block will require some configuration. Right now, it is waiting for a touch sensor to be pushed. We want it to wait for motor rotations instead. Select Rotation Sensor. Again, no motor in port A. Select port C instead. Change the number of degrees in the Until section to be 720. Don't touch the other settings, they're good for now. So we can remember how we configure this block, we'll write a little note to ourselves, a comment. Double-click somewhere in the empty space above the Wait For block to create a little box for the comment and type in Rotation Sensor 720 degrees. This comment will help you find problems later on if you have any, by reminding you what you originally intended the block to do. Your program is now ready to test. Move on to the next step when you're ready. It's time to download the program to your robot. Make sure your robot is plugged in and turned on. Press the Download button in the lower right corner of the screen. The program will begin transferring over to the robot and the NXT will beep when it's done. Now, unplug your robot and place it on a flat surface. Now when you sent your program over, the downloader put it in a folder called Software Files on the NXT. To run your program, you'll need to go to that folder and find it. From the main menu that you get when you start up the NXT, press the orange button once to get into the My Files menu, and press it once more to get into the Software Files menu. You should see your program listed now in this menu. If your program is not the first file you see, use the left and right triangle buttons on the NXT to scroll around until you do find it. With your file selected, press the orange button to select your program, and then once more to run it. And you're off! Well, as you can see, the robot's running in a circle, but weren't we going to make it go straight? What gives? Take a look here at the robot's wheels. Motor C runs the left wheel, and there it goes, but the right wheel's just sitting here, not really helping out. To make the robot go forward, we need the program to move the second motor as well as the first. So back to the computer we go. Hook your robot back up, then open up the Action palette and grab another motor block. Place it just after the first motor block. The Wait For block will move over to make room. This motor block needs to turn on the robot's right wheel, which as you can see is attached to the motor plugged into port B. So select Plug B in the list from the configuration panel. Now both of the motors are set to run until the rotation sensor tells them to give up. Don't forget to move the comment so that it remains above the Wait For block. Download the program and run it to see the difference. Alright, you've got your robot running now. There goes the robot. Let's take a look at the replay. Motor C, on. Motor B, on. There's one turn, 360, two turns, 720, and wait a minute, it's still going. Let's look at what we've got in the code here. Motor C on, motor B on, wait for 720 degrees, end of program. Doesn't that mean the robot stops? Well, no, it doesn't actually. Once the robot hits the end of the program, it actually starts slowing down gently until it reaches a stop. But we said we wanted the robot to go 720 degrees, not 720 plus some whatever leftovers. If you want your robot to stop after the motors have gone for 720 degrees, you have to tell it to stop. Remember, robots do exactly what they're told, not exactly what you want. To make motor C stop, go to the action palette and drag another motor block in at the end of the program. In the configuration panel, select motor C and then stop as the action. This motor block will now issue a braking command to motor C. Now we need to stop the second motor. From the action palette, drag another motor block onto the end of the program and set this one to motor B stop. Save your program. Download it to your robot and try it now. Motors on, true rotations, and stop. Good, robot. Good. Now that we know how to go forward, let's flip that behavior around and make the robot drive backward instead. Open your forward program by going into the File menu and choosing Open, then double-clicking your forward program in the list. Make sure it's the one that starts with your initials. Now, to make the robot go backwards, we need the motors to go backwards. So select the first motor block in your program, and in the configuration panel, change the direction to backward. Do the same for the second motor block. Motor C reverse, motor B reverse, wait for 720 degrees forward on motor C. Hey, wait a minute. Motor C is looking for 720 degrees in the wrong direction. Somebody needs to bring the wait for block up to date on what we're doing here. Select the wait for block, and in the until section of the configuration panel, select the backward arrow instead of the forward arrow. This lets the wait for rotation block know which way to look. Both motors reverse, wait for 720 degrees backward, stop. Good. Now let's save the program under a different name so we don't have a backward moving program called forward. Go to the File menu and select Save As. In the dialog box that appears, rename the program with your initials followed by the word reverse. Save your program. Now, note that because you've changed the name of the program when you saved it in the NXT programming software, you will need to make sure you're also running the new program on your NXT. After you download the program, check your NXT screen to see if the program you're about to run is the one that you've just downloaded. The name above the word Run on the NXT screen tells you what program you're about to run. It needs to match the name of the program in the programming software. If it doesn't, press the dark gray button on the NXT to get back to the list of programs, and then scroll around using the arrow buttons until you find the correct program, in this case, your reverse program. Select it by pressing the orange button once, and then run it by pressing the orange button again. Now that you know how to make the robot go forward and backward, let's combine the two to make it go somewhere, then come back to you. Open your reverse program if it isn't already. You can find review instructions on opening programs and setting up your workspace through the link button on the left. Now, with your reverse program open, click and hold the mouse button in the area above and to the left of your blocks. Then, without letting go, drag the mouse down and to the right to drag a box that will select all the blocks. Then release the mouse button. All 5 of your blocks should have a blue outline, but not the Mindstorm Start block at the beginning of the program. Now, go to Edit and select Copy from the drop-down menu. Go to File, Open, and select your forward program. Click somewhere off to the right of the blocks, then go to Edit, Paste to paste the blocks from your reverse program there. Grab the first block in your reverse behavior that you just pasted, and move the blocks to the end of the sequence beam and drop them there. Make sure the blocks appear solid, indicating that they've linked up. Go to File, Save As, and save this program as your initials return. Finally, download your program and run it. Your robot didn't exactly return to where it started, did it? In fact, the robot goes backwards twice as far as it went forward. 1 step forward and then 2 steps back. What happened? Let's take a closer look at the rotation sensor on motor C. The first command is to go forward until the rotation sensor reads 720 degrees going forward. No problem, done. What's next? Go backward until the rotation sensor reaches 720 degrees reverse. Note, however, that 720 degrees reverse is way back here. The rotation sensor's reference points are set when the program starts, and so our command to go 720 degrees reverse really means go until you hit the point 720 degrees behind where you started. Well, that's no good. When we want to go for a certain number of degrees, we don't want to have to think about every single movement we've made since the beginning of the program. Instead, what we want to do is restart the counting from the point we're at. So 720 degrees reverse means 720 degrees reverse from where you are now. Thankfully, we have just the block to do this. Drag a yellow rotation sensor block down from the sensor palette and place it right in between the going forward and going back behaviors. The yellow blocks are sensor command blocks, not to be confused with the orange wait for blocks, even though they deal with the same sensor. The whole explanation is a bit long, so we'll skip it for now. Just remember, the yellow one lets you reset, and the orange one controls how long you go. Configure our yellow rotation sensor block to port C, and then in the Actions section of the configuration panel, select Reset. This block will now reset the rotation sensor after it has gone the first 720 degrees, letting you begin measuring anew for the second motion. Save your program. Then download and run it.